Well, welcome to the podcast of the InnCoCells project, making innovative high-value cosmetic products from plants and plant cells. In this edition, we welcome Louise McBride, who is
Hi.
working. Hi, Louise, who is working for Scandiderma. And well, I'm going to ask Louise actually just to give us a little bit of background about Scandiderma and how she ended up there. I presume Louise is very, very clearly Scottish and is working in Norway. So unless it's a shared love of salmon, then we don't know the backstory, and it'd be interesting to find out. So over to you, Louise.
Hi. Thank you for having me tonight. So it's quite an interesting journey for me. Scandiderma recently started working with them this year, and I'm working within R&D, research, and the educational department within training. How that came about was it's quite an interesting story actually. It dates back to my younger years when I started my career. My background originally was within art and design.
Oh, so you're not a scientist
I'm not a
Oh,
scientist. No,
okay.
I
Oh,
would
interesting.
love to be, but no, not a scientist. So always fascinated with skincare. Basically, I started in a company, most will know L'Oreal, and I worked within their headquarters, and I was part of a very niche team where we were designing cosmetics within the makeup industry. So we were designing various looks, and that was probably my first insight into the journey of what actually goes into a product and how it ends up within the consumer's hand. But there was one thing that always was a personal concern, and that was that I always struggled with acne. And this is really a big part of my journey of why I entered into the world of cosmeceuticals. After many years of struggling with acne, I became very fascinated with ingredients. And I researched a lot of things for personal use. Got so interesting finding out what these ingredients were. It always was more than a brand to me. Because when you have a personal concern, you you want to find something that works, something with a high efficacy rate. And 20 years ago, little did I know, I was really concerned with the back of the bottle rather than the front of the name.
So not the brand name, but the actual contents.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, what was in that. And that was back in 1996, a long time ago.
That must be quite unusual back then as well, because it was, very pretty bottles and promises, but I don't know how much of it was you could rely on and take as gospel truth.
Yeah, yeah. So that's very true because a lot of it back then in the 80s was all about sense. It's all about how it looked, the smell. Yeah. There weren't so much transparency back then either. So then leading on from that, I had went down a pathway of seeing numerous doctors, etc., to treat this skin concern, which led me actually into an education. I went to study cosmetology.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's where the link now comes in.
So you almost came full circle around from not being a scientist, but coming into science by the back door almost.
Yes,
Wow. Okay.
very true. So it was there then my knowledge expanded. And then once I'd finished with that, I went to work for a really fantastic clinic back in the UK. And they were called at that time laser care. So this was a aesthetic clinic that specialized in lasers. And they did lots of various treatments. And it was really one of the first clinics, as I remember, to branch out of the hospital and come on to the high street. Yeah, so it was that was in 2004.
And were you working on the front line in the treatments, or were you like in the sort of administrative or advertising line?
I had a very diverse role actually. It was quite interesting. I entered in there actually as clinic assistant manager, believe it or not, and it was actually the chairman, John Guild, um, who was to this day that man was actually really fascinating for me and part of my growth. Opened up new doors, and I found myself very quickly working within the educational department in that company with innovation. And I was educating on products to the consumer within the company also. And this really was actually the perfect fit for me because I had that personal concern of acne and knowing what it feels like for someone when they're really looking for a product that actually does more than what it says.
Yeah. So something that does what it says on the tin, but also makes you feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I understand. Yeah.
So we had this I had a very personal relationship with a lot of the clients. And again, one of my things back then, it was never what was on the front. It was always educating the client, the B2B customers that we had too, on what was inside and why. So that was a question I would always ask people.
I mean, back then, was it easy to actually know what was in these formulations? Because, like you said, it wasn't so transparent. You couldn't get away with telling lies, but you could certainly get away with exaggerating the effects of cosmetic products in those days. So how did you go about sifting through that? Because, I mean, it sounds like you cared so much that you really wanted to make sure that what you were giving the customers was going to do what they wanted it to do.
The difference, basically. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's the end goal. So I could never really, you can't guarantee anything. So honesty is your best policy. And obviously within an industry where it's like we had so many brands, even back then, competing with one another. Moving into the cosmeceuticals, you were having more products that were given a better efficacy rate. But not many people understood why they were using things. So how I went about it was we were very much based in clinics. So you were having people come to you with a concern, and they would be coming there hoping to get the best treatment and the best possible advice. So to sit with someone and really focus on their needs, their concern, and really listen was important to me. And again, being honest and having someone understand what that ingredient is, what it does.
So, I mean, you mentioned the word cosmeceutical. For our listeners that aren't aware of this, lots of complicated terms, long words we use in the scientific field. Cosmeceutical is it's a product which is used as a cosmetic, but it has a pharmaceutical activity. And we're kind of in this grey area where, because of course, lots of cosmetic products are used in a medical sense for people who've got burns and other kinds of skin disfigurations. And there's a sliding scale between that and somebody's just putting on cosmetics to make themselves more attractive. So you have to have, I suspect, if you're promising that a product will do something, even if it's only being used for that purpose, it's got to say now what it does, and there's got to be some proof behind that.
For sure. So the movement within the trends just now, I mean, things evolve, sorry. And
they also evolve.
Yeah. What I've noticed is a lot of the concerns that we've had are still very much the same, but ingredients, science is becoming greater. There's a lot of mixed messages out there. So for me, when I was in this industry, when I started, I went in with true passion to make a difference, knowing how it feels to battle with a concern of your own, wanting to deliver a good, clean message. I wished for that for myself. I wished that I knew what I knew now back then. And then when you work with great minds, you start to see great things. And working beside doctors within the company that I worked with back in the UK, the knowledge there, the treatment was so I was learning every day. So it was more than just a job for me. It was life. I love everything to do with this industry.
It sounds like you were driven by it, in fact.
Still very much. I worked there for a very, very long time, 8 years, and my journey eventually took me over to Norway. And when in Norway, again, different market, I came in contact with Scandiderma.
So for the our listeners, Scandiderma is one of the 17 project partners. So Louise is talking about one of our SMEs, our small medium enterprises, which is part of the consortium.
Yeah, Scandiderma is an R&D company, but it also has other companies within. And I also represent one of their other brands, which is Chouvet. And this is a really cosmeceutical brand that has really good innovative ingredients within it. And it's while I was working there, InnCoCells, it came around, and I was asked if I would like to be part of this project.
It sounds like you seize it with both hands kind of thing, because it sounds like almost made for you, actually.
Yeah, I really did. seize it with both hands. Yeah, I jumped
Sorry.
at it actually. Yeah.
Taking the words out of your mouth there.
Yeah. Because it was something that now was a time to actually sit with great minds and sit and see things really from the beginnings. And now the trends and everything have changed so much. We were talking about sustainability, transparency, efficacy. We're talking all these things are coming off our tongues. But what does that actually mean? What does that mean to the consumer? What does that mean? And it's that clean, clear message. And being someone who's very much been working with the the end product, I've always been given a product to then take out and educate. Coming from this angle now, from the beginnings, for me it's the ultimate.
You get to be actually in on the ground floor and develop the product, which does what you want it to do.
Yeah, I feel I'm going to come through with it, and it's just going to empower me even more to give that the right message now, because there's so many mixed messages, clean, green. You know, we're saying all these words, but do we actually know what they mean?
Well, of course. I mean, once they become a buzzword, then everyone tries to use them, and there has to be some kind of certification or guarantee that they are what they say.
Yeah, so I'm here now. We're working on this amazing project together, and it's fascinating. And the knowledge, the ingredients that we're discovering and what they do, it's just incredible.
Just again, for our listeners, we're actually sitting in a hotel in Naples where we've had our second project meeting. The first project meeting was held online because of COVID. The second project meeting we managed to have in person. So to met all the people you're working with for the first time and actually seeing them discussing all the stuff that you're really interested in, have been interested in for decades, that must be a real special moment for you, actually.
Very special. Yeah, very. 20 years within the cosmetic industry. 20 years, you know, working beside, you know, within clinics, working, training, education, taking a message out there, but to actually stand beside people who are developing scientists, I'm honoured, really honoured.
So it seems to me that you know you're now you've come into this project, and it seems to be something like almost fulfilling your dreams about where you wanted to be. And so I have to ask, what would you actually like to see the final outcome of the project be? What would you like to personally take away from the project when it's completed?
High quality, innovative ingredients, of course. Something that really makes a difference to what we have. Something that is more effective, the efficacy of things. Something that claims what it does and actually gives those results. We have a lot of amazing ingredients already on the marketplace, but I think coming from the European end, this project's pretty special. You know, we're developing things out of the European marketplace, you know, and that to me just is huge. It's huge, you know, having all these great scientists together developing these working, I should say at the moment, on these newfound ingredients out of Europe.
Will it make a big difference to Scandiderma?
Yeah, I mean, any new ingredients that come out of something that's more high quality, yeah, of course.
Excellent.
Yeah, of course it will.
Because I think, again, for our listeners who aren't familiar with the way these innovation projects work, the idea is that the work in the project will have an impact in the real world, and that impact has got to be measurable in some way. And this is why the project involves a large number of industrial partners, including a large industry partner, that's Merck, and several small, medium enterprises. And the idea would be that all of the SMEs involved in the project would in some way be able to take the work forward and maybe do something else with it. So what would you like to see Scandiderma take forward and achieve in terms of their own product portfolio?
Well, we have a company, as I said, called Chauvet. And we're also developing Clean Scientifics, which is another movement within the company of Scandiderma. We have great things that we're working towards. We're already working within the cosmeceutical market. So I think any new ingredient that comes out from this project and what it represents and what the whole project represents is gold. It's gold dust.
Fantastic. Oh, that's really good. I mean, it's a very positive story and positive outlook that you've got from the whole project and its future impact. So where next for you after Naples? You're going straight back to Norway, or
Norway. I was planning a trip to Scotland,
Mm-hmm.
but I think with COVID and all the regulations, it's a bit difficult. Or as we say in Norway, vanskelig.
Okay,
Yeah.
bit of language skills there coming into the podcast. Very nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's been absolutely fascinating hearing your story, Louise. It's a brilliant way to get to know all the different people in the consortium, because I mean, we've got 17 partners, but the partners contribute in some cases 10 or 11 people. So we've maybe got more than 100 people altogether in the consortium, and they've all got a story of how they came to be working in the field and what their passion is, what drives them, and why they work in the field they do. So it's always great to have different perspectives and new stories from the people who work in the project. So thank you very much. It's been absolutely great talking to you, and that's about it for this edition of the InnCoCells podcast. Join us next time for another instalment, and thank you very much, everybody, for listening.